Hi, I'm Jaymie.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the Body Smart Podcast.
And today we are talking about ultra-processed foods.
This is a good one because it's like a very popular theme on social media, which is what I eat in a day. What do you eat in a day, or a typical week even?
Actually, people are really surprised
Yeah.
because it's not like super healthy foods that people think are super healthy foods. It's very normal.
Yep.
I would say a normal day for me is actually I have cereal a lot at the moment because I have a little boy and trying to do anything remotely different is a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
So we both sit down and have our Weetabix. And then I actually tend to have 4 meals a day rather than like 3 meals and snacks. So I'll often have leftovers at like 11 and then
Leftovers from
dinner.
Okay, the night before. Yeah.
So my brunch, I guess, is like chicken curry or
Yeah.
I don't know, fish and vegetables or something. And then my second lunch is usually about 2. And again, it's often leftovers or just like bits from the fridge. So just putting together a bit of a mishmash of a carb, a protein and some veg. And then dinner is the same. But it's generally just along that theme of a balanced meal rather than a snack, if you know what I mean. So I don't actually eat a lot of ultra-processed foods because all of my meals are meals.
Got ya. And what when you say a balanced meal, like what does a balanced meal look like for you?
So I'm actually not the biggest lover of carbs naturally. I would say I generally have quite a small portion of carbs. I love vegetables. If I don't have enough vegetables for a few days, I just get cravings to eat like a bowl of broccoli because
Wow.
I said on holiday actually,
Yeah.
we just got back from holiday and everyone else had been cooking. We were with 4 other couples. And if I make a curry, I'll make like 5 or 6 different veg go in there and some chicken. Whereas it was like, it's a chicken curry. It is chicken and sauce.
Yeah.
And so I got to like day 4 or 5 and I said, Therese, can we just go and buy some peas? Because I just want to eat some vegetables.
Yeah.
So I will just pack out vegetables. I'd probably have like 3 or 4 vegetables. And then some protein, so fish, chicken, mince. We use quite a lot of minced beef because it's easy and quick to cook. A lot of fish, a lot of seafood like prawns. And then generally a lot of flavour. I love spicy food, so I use a lot of seasonings, a lot of chili, a lot of different spices and herbs.
So a lot of whole foods by the majority of it.
Yeah.
Any ultra-processed foods or snacking?
Yeah, so I would say in terms of how I consume ultra-processed foods, it would be sauces. That would be something that I would use in my cooking. So I might add some kind of pre-packaged sauce to that balanced meal just to add a bit of flavour if I'm in a rush one day. I do tend to have protein bars, which are definitely in that ultra-processed category. Apart from that, not tons. Like drinks, I do like a fizzy drink every now and then.
Yeah.
And I don't drink milk. So my alternative to milk, they are processed. Discuss whether that's ultra-processed or processed. But if you need to have oat milk or almond milk or soy milk because of intolerances, then that's kind of your only option.
Yeah.
So that would be where ultra-processed foods kind of slot into my diet.
No, for me, my sort of daily diet, again, I try not to overcomplicate it too much. I pretty much have the same breakfast all the time, which is like 6 whole eggs, avocado, some tomatoes. Sometimes I'll have bread with it, toast. Sometimes I won't. If I've maybe overeaten a little bit, that'll be kind of the thing I'll cut back with calories.
Yeah.
And then same as you, we use HelloFresh and we get it for 4 people.
Yeah.
So we cook for 4 and then we have it for dinner that night, and then whatever's over we have for lunch the next day. So like that's made it more interesting in terms of what we eat because every time we're having like different food 5 days a week, and then we've got our lunch for the next day. And then just like to top up protein, I will either just eat a pack of chicken or have a protein shake. Again, the protein shake is going to be more processed, and I do find with something like that, when you're having a high dose of something like protein powder, if you just knock it back really quickly, you can get like a little bit of bloating or digestive issues, and actually just drinking it a little bit more slowly, swilling it around your mouth, getting more saliva in it, actually helps the body process. You know, if you're just going to drink like 60 grams of protein in 20 seconds, you know, your body is going to struggle to process that amount. You think about 60 grams of protein for like 2 big chicken fillets. You know, you couldn't just eat that in like 10 seconds, but you could drink it. So yeah, and then same for you. I think when I travel, that's when my processed foods go up. I might use protein bars or anything else, so I might eat out more. And the same thing, like if I've eaten out lots or I've been traveling and eating out lots, I tend to find like I feel like more lethargic, more like heavy, and I just can't wait to get back and eat like proper food again.
Yeah, and I think what you just said about having 2 chicken breasts worth of protein crammed into a protein shake kind of comes down to what processed food's all about and why it's so divisive, and ultimately why it was even created. If you think about in the last century when we needed to feed a lot of people in an efficient way, processing food and putting it into a more condensed form where there's more calories, more taste, more everything in a smaller amount, a cheaper amount.
That lasts longer.
Yeah, that served the purpose at the time.
Yeah.
And so that's why there's been a huge growth over the past century in this type of food. Maybe not century, maybe 70 years. And it served a purpose at the time it was created. But we've kind of gone over the peak now where we don't need our food to do that for us.
We definitely don't need it. Yeah.
And the problem is it creates a lot of income for these companies. So they can use science, use chemists, use all of this food technology to create food that has more addictive kind of properties. It's cheaper to produce. It lasts longer on the shelves.
Yep.
Why would they not?
Yeah, I mean, if you're pushing profit over everything, it's going to make sense to do that type of stuff. And it is, if food is being made by design, it's like, well, how highly palatable can it be? We've all heard the Pringles commercial, once you pop, you can't stop. Yeah. Which is like, if you were to look at Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop, or Oreos, once you eat one, you end up eating lots. It's very rare you eat an apple and go, oh, I just need a second apple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just, I've never seen anyone like so eager to go and eat a second apple. It just doesn't happen. And I think that is what you start to see with the ultra processed, highly palatable foods versus the more whole, minimally processed foods that are very nutrient dense and natural. They just don't have that same palatability to them.
They don't, and they're also not pushed on us.
No.
So you don't see adverts for apples on the side of billboards. You see adverts for convenience food, processed food. And I've got a really interesting stat actually. In the UK, 50% of the average diet is processed food. And in the US, highly processed food.
Yeah.
In the US, it's 58%.
Wow.
And if you compare that to less developed countries, places like Brazil, African countries, that's more around the 20% mark.
Yep.
So there is definitely a correlation between like what's pushed on a population and what that income can afford.
Yeah. And you see it like the Mediterranean diet is one of the healthiest diets that you can have and has the longest life expectancy. If you look at what that diet consists of, it's mainly whole nutrient dense foods that are quite high in fats. Versus if you look at more of the Western approach to the way things are going, it's more high carb, refined sugars, highly processed. They zap the energy out of you, in a lot of ways, and you come back craving for more as well.
You do. And I think nobody out there would say, oh, no, actually, I think processed foods are really good for you.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is under an illusion that they're a healthy choice. But the reason why I wanted us to chat about it today is there's been a study come out this month from King's College London where they've actually looked at the objective impacts, because there's been a lot of meta-analysis over the years of, yes, people who eat more processed foods are generally more overweight, but they've been correlational, and they couldn't say this causes that.
Yeah.
But this latest study, they've actually taken twins and they've given them like a very controlled diet. One had processed foods and one had unprocessed foods. So same calories, same macros, same fiber content, everything. And only 2 weeks later, there was a huge difference in the health markers of the twin who ate the processed foods. And she'd gained 1 kilo in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. Same calories.
Same calories.
Yeah.
So I guess where my head would go with breaking that down, it'd be like, right, well, what's caused the difference in terms of energy expenditure? And, it's showing that most ultra processed foods are going to require 50% less energy from the thermic effect of food.
Yeah.
So let's say you eat 2,000 calories from processed food, instead of that being maybe, 200, coming from the thermic effect of food on the expenditure, it's more like 100. That doesn't seem like a lot, but over 2 weeks, there's 1,400 calories not being burned, which is about half a pound of
Just
fat.
from eating.
Just from fat. But then if you also looked at nutrient dense foods, I am giving you more energy, so you're probably going to walk around more, fidget more, maybe exercise more, exercise harder, maybe sleep better. And all those things could then influence your output, so you're burning more calories, versus if you eat a highly processed diet and then get a sugar crash afterwards and then lay down on the couch or don't move as much or feel worse, again, are you going to move less, fidget less, not feel motivated to work out? Like the answer could be yes. So I think that makes sense, but it's even more interesting to see that it's on paper now.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just the weight. So there were significant changes in her blood sugar levels, her blood fat levels. So there are very quick implications to somebody's health markers 2 weeks in if you change your diet to include more processed foods. And therefore, it kind of balances out. If you were to change your diet and remove those foods, you would expect to see an improvement. Yeah, which explains a lot why when people start to clean up their diet, they suddenly feel so much better and they have more energy. And again, it's that ripple effect where they then want to work out, they then want to drink more water, they then want to keep eating healthily.
Yeah,
and it's that first step.
Positive feedback loop of, you feel better, you've got more energy, you're getting better sleep, you move more, you feel better, you exercise, you feel better, and it feeds into that positive feedback loop. And a huge part of that does start from your diet. It's something that we do every day and will continue to do every day until the day we die. So having a well thought out strategy for it is going to allow you to reap the rewards from it. And it's not just in terms of physical health, it's in mental health as well. I definitely find if I eat not the best, don't make the best food choices, eat highly processed foods, my energy levels are lower, my cognitive function isn't as good. I'm very conscious of my energy levels with work now and being able to perform at the peak that I can for as long as I can throughout the day. And I've even become aware of certain foods that can affect that as well. And ultra processed foods definitely play a big part in that.
Yeah, and I think when we've just said, you could just cut them out and you'll feel better. It is easier said than done. And there will probably be foods, like you've just said, that don't make you feel great, but you still have them.
Of course.
Because they're convenient or you really like them. And that's the case with these foods as well. And we're not going to say you should cut all processed foods out of your diet, because it is realistic. Maybe you could do that, but there's a balance.
I mean, I still eat ice cream every day. I think I've eaten ice cream every day for the past 6 months.
Nice.
Just like these Aldi ice creams, we just get all different ones. We've been having these Biscoff chocolate and white chocolate ones, 220 calories.
Yeah.
But when I choose to have them, it's at the end of the day, because of maybe just how I might feel afterwards, and the work day is sort of done and something to enjoy. But again, it's still making up 10%, 15% of my calories for that day. So it's a small percentage, and the majority of my calories are coming from the non-ultra processed, nutrient dense foods. And then, still allow yourself to indulge a little bit and have those ultra processed foods, because one, maybe you want to enjoy them, but two, it's probably almost impossible nowadays to just completely cut them out your diet.
It is. And one of the things that we were talking about before was there's actually a kind of graded scale of processing, because it's actually really rare that you are going to be able to eat a diet that is completely unprocessed. That means literally just having potatoes, vegetables, and a lump of meat.
Yeah.
So, even you've got to consider things like oats and milk have been processed to some amount. But that isn't necessarily damaging. It's as you go down the scale of how much they've been processed, because things have been added, things have been taken away. The other element with processing is it affects that thermic effect of food, because maybe you're stripping out fiber, maybe you're stripping out protein, things that are going to slow down the digestion. So it's not just what's been added, which I think a lot of people look at, it's got no added sugar, or it's got no added preservatives, so it's not that bad. But these are the things to consider as a whole when you're thinking how does this food impact my feeling and my health compared to this food? What's been added, what's been taken away, and what chemical processes have been applied? Because the more that food is processed before it enters your mouth, the less you have to process it, the more energy you're going to extract from it easily, and therefore the caloric impact on your intake is going to be higher.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's the calories play a role as well, and it's also the nutrients. Normally the more processed, you're stripping out more nutrients. And I definitely found about 2 years ago, I'm very aware of what I'm eating, and I was maybe having some digestive issues and then some stool issues, and I was what's going on? So I started almost doing an elimination diet to figure it out. And it was the thing that I least expected. It was spreadable butter. I was just getting Anchor spreadable butter, which has got a high amount of rapeseed oil in it to keep it, so the spreadable butter allows it to be spreadable. And I literally just shifted from spreadable butter to normal butter. That was it. fix the issues straight away because I was having like butter on a regular basis. And again, that would be a sign of like something that's more processed versus, you know, less processed instead. You know, butter is still processed to an extent. And I've actually started to, you know, when I was massively into counting calories and counting macros, you know, every calorie counted, every macro counted, wanted everything to be as macro friendly as possible. And it kind of feeds into like making choices sometimes based on calories and macros and not always based on nutrients and health and you know, how much it can help your digestive health. And, you know, I've started now over time to switch back. So I have like whole milk and I have, you know, full fat butter and I use olive oil instead of 1 cal cooking spray. Again, I'm still conscious of the portions, but I'm going back to a more whole foods approach and nutrient dense approach. And in terms of like energy levels and cognitive function, how I generally feel and what my health markers look like, they've all wildly improved as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really easy to fall into the trap of when you're trying to be healthy or you're trying, particularly if you're trying to lose weight. There are so many products out there that are whitewashed, greenwashed, whatever the effective word is, the health halo, if you want to call it that, where they use certain words on the packaging to imply this is a healthier choice or this is a lower fat or a lower calorie choice. And that pings all these lights in your head to go, yes, that's better for me. Actually, you need to look at, right, what is for your goals right now and your health right now, what is better for you? Because probably a smaller serving of full fat milk rather than a processed, low fat, high protein soy milk, if you don't need to drink soy milk, you're probably going to be better off with that full fat, unprocessed version. So the thing with food packaging is a lot of these claims don't need to be regulated. So the manufacturers can have something along those lines in the ingredients and smash it all over the packaging and it just hits those buttons for you to trigger you to think that's better. And I think pausing in the supermarket when you're comparing the options is super important.
Because I mean, like the new buzzword, especially like I notice it from when I go traveling, or I've been a couple of places around Europe this year, and like in the UK, especially now, everything's got protein on it. Protein water, protein Weetabix, protein yogurts, protein, everywhere you go, protein. It's like the buzzword. And even when you look at like Weetabix, like protein Weetabix to normal Weetabix, the difference is there's a minimal. It's like next to none. And you'll often pay like a 30-40% ramp up in terms of price for what you're getting. And then you're getting actually something that's really highly processed. Anytime I've eaten like a protein yogurt, like my stomach feels horrible like an hour afterwards. And I would have honestly rather just ate a little bit more meat or ate something that was an actual genuinely nutrient dense, minimally processed protein source. Just had a normal yogurt. And I think you see that like before the protein hype, it was very much on fat, and that's still very relevant. It's people going for low fat. And again, you look at like a really low fat Greek yogurt or 0% low fat Greek yogurt, but it tends to be filled with extra sugars, you know, tons of extra sugars, versus the normal one is got a lot more fat in it. But like calorie for calorie, there's a difference. But like if you probably ate the full fat yogurt, you probably would feel more satiated because of the fat and the protein. You wouldn't spike your blood sugar, and you would feel fuller for longer of having a high fat option. But often what people are saying in terms of the how their mind is, they'll go shopping and they'll see 0% fat, and that's the first thing that they grab because it's almost been cultured into people to go, oh, the lower fat is going to mean you'll have less fat or it'll be better for you in some way.
Yeah, and same with the sugar tax that's been brought in the UK. You know, everything, especially drinks wise now, everything, some places you go is sugar free, but it's not sugar free.
You know what's wild?
Like water.
Wild, yeah. You know what's wild about that is I like when that sugar tax come out, everyone hated Jamie Oliver for it, and I was just like, the guy's done a bloody good thing for society, like genuinely, like a really good. Like you speak to any Americans and say there's a sugar tax, they just laugh at you. What do you mean a sugar tax? Like that's not the case at all in the US. But like he done like a really good thing, and people were like, how dare you take my bottle of Lucozade from 50 grams of sugar to 30? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, no one needs 50 grams of sugar and 330 mils of liquids. You know, it's just like just crazy. But that like even just shows you how society's being cultured to be like, don't take our sugar away from us, even though it's something that's generally not great in mass amounts like that for people.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about is what can people actually do, because it's all very easy to say, oh, just eat less processed foods and don't be drawn in by the packaging. But one of the things that we always challenge our clients to do is not just look at the calories and macros, but we also set them a sugar goal and a fiber goal.
Definitely.
Because that then guides your choices a bit more healthily, rather than, like you said, just hitting those macro goals at all cost. if you know you're also trying to keep your sugar in check and you're also trying to hit enough fiber, you're naturally guided to more whole foods.
It forces you to do that. So yeah, like having that fiber goal, having that sugar goal, when you go to the supermarket and you're like, hey, I've got like 30 grams of sugar or 40 grams of sugar to have today. Like that even is still quite a lot. Like 40 grams of sugar, for context, is 10 teaspoons of sugar. But if you're having to do that, you know, instead of that oats that you might pick up, oats on the go, which has got 15 grams of sugar in it, you're looking at that and you're going, but a normal bag of oats has got no sugar in. So, you know, then you're having to, you know, pick more whole or more minimally processed foods that have more nutrients, keep you more satiated, keep you fuller for longer, and start to, again, help you live an overall healthy lifestyle. And if you've got weight loss goals, it definitely makes that path and that journey a lot easier too.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, if you don't know where to start, just wherever you're at, just being more aware is helpful. Yep. So you don't have to think, oh, well, he said 40 grams of sugar. Oh my God, I need to only have 40 grams of sugar. But if you do go in and start doing that comparison, that awareness and that informed choice is going to show through, and you are going to see results from that. There are guidelines on things like sugar and fiber, you know, whether that's for weight loss or for health. And I think particularly fiber, it's really important that you're getting 25 to 30 grams of fiber for a woman every day. And I would say the majority of our clients are like 10 when they come in. Yeah,
it's not something that's pushed at all. So, you know, starting to just even increase your fiber helps with your digestion, helps with having regular stools and healthy stools, and really just making you have more nutrient-dense foods. You know, you're looking for more blueberries, raspberries, you get a lot of volume for a lot of food, and you're just picking more, you know, fibrous, voluminous foods.
Yeah, and you're not going to find much fiber in a packet of processed food.
No.
Unless it's a fiber one bar, which...
Unless it's a fiber one bar.
It can be part of your 20%, which brings me on to one of our other kind of easy to apply tips is that 80-20 balance. So do you want to explain what that is?
So it's just always focusing on what you do the majority of the time matters, not the minority. So if 80% of your calories are coming from these whole nutrient-dense, minimally processed foods, and 20% is coming from this highly processed foods that are maybe nutrient void, you know, it's, again, the majority matters, not the minority, especially when it comes to health. I mean, yes, like you could go down the route of going like 100% like all in on like health, and you see a lot of this pushed online, like you should never promote anything to do with ultra processed, or you should never promote anything to do with sugar, or you should never, you know, and it's just like, I think there's a disattachment to the real world when people are saying stuff like that. And it's like, I just think when I speak to a lot of these people that say that type of stuff, even if you live the healthiest life in the world, you do everything to the book, to the T, to the most optimal way, which is just not practical for 99% of people. Like, you're still going to die anyway. Yeah, you might have got a couple more years in your life for doing it, but just like the trade-off for me is just not worth it. Not practical for most people. So I think focusing on that 80-20, where the majority of your foods and calories on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, because it's not like if you eat a pizza one day and that was 80% processed foods because you've had a pizza, that's fine if it's like a one-off in the week, you know, and you still stick into that. What I do the majority of the time matters more than the minority.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good point you make, because sometimes people are good all week and then they have a takeout on a Saturday and beat themselves up about it. But if you cook your own meals and it's really based around whole foods Monday through Friday, and then you have one takeout a week, that still kind of fits that 80-20. Yeah. It's not just within a 24-hour period. You kind of need to zoom out to have a healthy relationship with food and not micromanage every single choice. Yeah,
because you'll go, if you look at it, even you can look at the day, you can look at the week, you can look at the month and year. Sometimes, you know, we all go through seasons of, everyone's had a period, not everyone, but like I would imagine most people have had a period where it's like there's just a ton of weddings. Or there's like wedding season. You're just like, what is this? And it's like there's a lot of extra drinking and eating, and it can make it really difficult. And sometimes it's understanding like, hey, this is just going to be a larger time of maybe more alcohol or processed foods or eating out, but like having an understanding in your mind that you're still going to keep some non-negotiables up and have to dial things in more because of that. Or like around Christmas and holidays, people maybe want to be a little bit more loose, but that's fine. And again, it's not judging yourself so harshly for enjoying those times, but just still having a standard that you're not going to slip too far the other way, because that then makes it so much harder to like restart and pick that pace back up again.
It does. And I think just really being in tune with your body and how these choices are affecting it can really help with that. So like you said, if you feel after that kind of stream of events really lethargic and really yuck, noticing that and being like, oh, that's because of the food choices that I've made. okay, I've got the choice to come back to healthier options rather than it just becoming a bit of a downward spiral. So knowing why you feel a bit rubbish and knowing you're empowered to change that back around is really helpful.
Definitely. I find that like I'll go through, like I'll travel, I'll eaten loads of processed foods, and you can't wait to get back to your routine, to drink loads of water, wake up and go to bed at the same time, just have a little bit more of a routine, because you haven't had...
By the way, are we just getting old? Because I'm like, oh my God, yes, that's how I felt on holiday.
I think, what I think it is, and I've even just spoke to clients before who have just started drinking more water, like something as simple as they just drink more water, and then they don't drink as much water one day, and they're like, I feel so horrible, like cognitively I'm not there, energy levels are down, I felt more hungry, I felt more tired, more grumpy. It's like just water, just of drinking more water. So I think that awareness of, when I drink loads of water, I feel great. Why would I not want to keep drinking more water? And it's like, when I eat mainly, minimally processed whole foods, I feel great. I have good energy levels. It aligns with my health goals, maybe my weight loss goals. Then it's like, okay, maybe you go through a season of eating more of that food, or a time or a day or whatever. But just knowing that, like, okay, that's fine. Like, I've made that choice, but I'm just going to instantly get back to what makes me feel good, what is in alignment with my health values and everything else.
Yeah, definitely agree. And so if you had somebody who currently is in that average demographic of 50% processed foods, they don't necessarily know how that feels to have an 80-20 balance and have that energy and vitality. What would your advice be where to start?
Would be to just take a good look at what you're eating on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis. Most people are eating somewhere between 40 and 65 of the same foods every single week. So you've just got to look at that, and a lot of people might be like, right, I'm just going to all or nothing approach. I'm just going to strip it back and go all whole foods. I don't think that's practical for a lot of people. I think it's just being like, hey, like, what are like a couple of items of foods that I'm having on a week-to-week basis that maybe I can get a version that's not as processed. So if you wanted to go through like how a food could go from being, minimally not processed at all to very processed, you could look at like a potato. So that's like as least processed as it could be. After that would be a chip. Did I get fries for our US friends? And then we say crisps, they say
potato chips.
Potato chips. Is that right? No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going from something that's not processed at all to more processed as a chip or a fries, to then a potato chip, which is highly, highly processed. So maybe you could look at it and be like, maybe you're having the version of the food, which is the chip. And it's like, with the fries, could you dial that back to the potato? And it's just like, that's how you could start to do it. And if you've done that for like 2 or 3 items this month, and then again next month sat down and went, hey, let's do 2 or 3 more items. If you're only eating 45 to 60 foods, you do that over the course of the year, you've made a huge switch and change in your diet. And that could just be with either some foods like just potatoes, but it could be with some snacks.
Yeah.
You just dial back certain things. Maybe you're having certain bars or treats or whatever you have in your house, and maybe you just start to dial them back a version. What you're going to notice is you're getting more nutrients, more fiber, less sugar, you're going to have more energy, more vitality, and it's just slowly going to start to have a positive impact in your life. And it feels easier to do because you're just focusing on changing 2 or 3 things instead of everything at once.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time these foods end up in our diet out of convenience, and they just stay there because you buy the same things, you go down the same aisles in the supermarket, you have a pattern of recipes that you make. And if you find something that you can swap out that still serves that role and isn't inconvenient to you, that's the key. Yeah. So if you're going to try and move from, I don't know, a microwave meal to cooking from scratch every meal, like overnight, that's probably not going to be realistic. Yeah. But like you're saying, if you can just find those quick wins and little ingredient swaps, that's going to add up over time. One of the things that I think is really key to look at as well is like how you cook or how you plan your meals.
Or don't cook. Because I think that's honestly like a real, God, I don't know if I like using this word, like an epidemic that people just don't cook anymore because it takes time, it's not convenient, and people are eating out more than ever, due to convenience and due to pressure and time, and it is having a big impact with us just choosing more of these, quick and ready microwave meals that are just done for you. And yeah, you're getting highly processed foods with lots of additives, flavors, sugars, and everything else, and it's not great. You know what I mean? It's not great for you. It's probably not going to be great for your kids, and it's a skill. It's a skill to be able to learn to cook and also cook efficiently, effectively, and fast.
Yeah, and I think the big game changer for a lot of our clients when it comes to making healthier choices with their cooking is meal planning and also batch cooking.
Yeah.
And those skills can apply in this context as well. If you're wanting to level up the health options that you're including in your diet, actually cooking stuff on a Sunday, for example. So instead of buying sliced ham, buy a whole chicken and cook it on a Sunday and use that for your sandwiches, for example. It requires being a bit more organized, and it requires planning, and yes, a little bit more time. But if you do it all in one go, you can spend like an hour and a half in the kitchen on a Sunday, but have like Monday to Friday through loads of time-saving options that you can just grab on the busy days.
And you feel great. That I think a lot of times where people get stressed out about food is, Monday starts, it's like back to the grind for a lot of people, back into the, go sort of mentality. You've got your job, you've got your kids, there's so many different things going on. There's a lot of decisions to make, and sometimes making all these extra decisions around food or health can feel like overwhelming, or I just don't have the mental bandwidth or time for it. Or maybe you get like 1 or 2 days in and you've been able to keep on top of it, but then something happens. Versus if you do a lot of that, if you make it, it's making it easy to win. It's setting your environment up for success. So you do that meal planning or prepping on the Sunday. You're going into that week already feeling good because, hey, you've taken care of the food part of things. And, I think the pushback I've had as a coach over time has been like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to eat the same foods. It's too repetitive. It's too boring. And it's like, okay, instead of looking at that as like a hyper negative of that's not the way I want to go, is like, why don't you try it and see how it works to begin with? And if it doesn't work and you need more variety, then find a way of having more variety in your diet.
And actually, there's lots of ways to use batch cooking in a different way. So for my son, he doesn't have like packaged foods. I make all his food, but I freeze it. So I'll make like a shepherd's pie for 8 human adults, but portion it into like 10 baby-sized portions and freeze it. And I do that like once a week. I cook something massive just for him. So there's like a whole repertoire in the freezer. He doesn't eat shepherd's pie for 10 days in a row. Like he has it once every 10 days in rotation with all these other things that I've made. And you can do that as an adult as well for yourself. Like you can make, if there's 4 of you in the household, make it for 8 and freeze half and have that next week or on Thursday, not tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
And if you look at like all the benefits you're going to get from this, maybe there's a slight time cost because, there is always a cost to everything. But you're going to probably save money. You're going to have better health, more energy, be more motivated to take certain actions because of that, have a more better cognitive function that can positively impact your job more than you might realize. Then all of those things can positively impact your sleep. It's just, there's a huge, big positive feedback loop to that. And yes, it requires a little bit more being, a little bit more organized and planning, but you probably are already doing that to an extent. You're just doing it in a way that maybe isn't serving you in the best way it could.
Yeah, and like I said before, you've probably got patterns that you just do because you just do.
Yeah.
And so you have to intervene once or twice to change those patterns and think of a new way of doing it. But then they will become your habitual patterns and you won't have to think about it every time.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's really important just to change. Just like don't get overwhelmed by this conversation and just, maybe take a closer look at your fiber and sugar intakes. I think that's always a good place to start. But then just be like, hey, are there 2 foods that we eat each month now that we could change out for next month?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, just start there. And if you just follow that process, once a month for the rest of the year, you'd find yourself like your diet's probably wildly changed in a really positive way.
Yeah, I think those are great tips. And so if you are trying to lose weight or if you're just generally aware of your health, those are some things that you can do to help whatever you're trying to achieve with your diet. And yeah, if you are struggling with anything to do with losing weight, trying to improve your health, this is exactly what we do on a daily basis with our clients. So we take you from where you are, whether that's overwhelmed, not knowing where to start, what decisions to make. We will walk you through every step of the way and make sure it's realistic for your life. Because as you know from listening to our podcast, we're not about going all or nothing. We're about finding what works for you. So coaching can take you every step of the way with someone guiding you through the decisions, through the planning processes until it does just feel easy and it feels like part of your life.